Hello everyone and welcome back to another Sims 4 speed build. Today I'm building Anavrin from Netflix's You. If you're new to my channel, I post videos every Friday and Sunday, so consider subscribing to keep up with the latest and coolest speed builds and Let's Plays. This show is one of my favorite Netflix originals. When season 1 came out, I binged watched it almost in one sitting. Then in the year-long break between 1 and 2, I was too excited to wait for season 2, so I read all the books, which made me even more excited. And then when December 26th came around, I was totally ready for another binge watch, which I may have completed in less than 24 hours. So if you haven't seen season 2 yet, there might be a few spoilers in this video, so go watch season 2 right now, and then make sure to come back in 24 hours to watch this again. I don't want anyone getting mad at me for the spoilers, so you've been warned, and if you continue watching now, it's all on you. But let's get down to it. Anavrin is the store that Joe Goldberg / Will Bettelheim works at and is owned by Love and 40 Quinn's parents. As I was watching the season, I was so excited to start this build because I could practically envision every piece of furniture and clutter I was going to use right away, even though this build still took me about 7.5 hours to complete. I went ahead and started with building the office / break room area. This is the first part of Anavrin that we see when Joe is having his interview with Calvin. The room is only shown from certain angles, so I had to get creative on some of these parts. In the middle of the room, they have a big round table, and since it's a bookshop, I feel like the workers would read books pretty often here, so I placed some books on the table. On this back wall, I figured this room would double as an office space, so I placed a computer, a filing cabinet, and some wall decor that could be seen in an office. Moving into the main bookstore area, this is one of the 2 rooms of this building that are shown the most, the other being the kitchen, which I'll go through later in the video. I love the entire vibe of Anavrin. There's so many plants everywhere, and it's kind of industrial, but also very homey at the same time, which is an interesting combo to say the least. This front counter space is where they keep the cash register, which I do come back to add in later on. It's also where Love puts out samples, so I made sure to put the little dessert display on the end there. In the middle of the room, they have a display with a lot of different bags hanging on it. I recreated this by putting 2 shelves back to back and placing backpacks all over it. Then to produce the idea that things are kind of hanging off of it, I placed some of the hanging robes on the sides. It's not perfect, but it gets the point across. The next part I put together was the displays for the books. I had a lot of fun with this one over here because I didn't use any tables, so I relied heavily on the Move Objects sheet to create this. I spruced up the wooden crates with some potted plants, no pun intended, and put the book displays on top of the boxes. I think having the books at different heights adds a very interesting element to this display. I used the same type of concept with this second display. I placed a wicker coffee table and placed several plants and books on and around it, and it kind of has a boho style feel to it. On this outer wall, Anavrin has some really neat stained glass windows. I couldn't find any that were the exact same shape, but I did find these, which kind of resemble the same stained glass. Along this wall, I placed some more bookshelves, plants, and tables that host a lot of different book displays for the bookstore. Anavrin really is such a neat store. It's a bookshop, coffee shop, and a grocery store all in one, but it's also extremely trendy. I did upload this to the Sims 4 gallery and I marked it as a cafe lot, so your Sims can go here for coffee and reading, but they don't have to worry about being stalked or getting murdered here. I really like this bistro type area here. We're just going to pretend that the sign says welcome to Anavrin in Simlish. I imagine this is a quiet little corner of the store where people would bring their laptops and get some work done while drinking coffee and snacking on samples. At least that's what I would do. This area between the bookstore and the grocery store is the cafe. This is where Netflix makes us think Joe is seeing Love for the first time, even though he actually planned the entire encounter. It's a much different storyline from the book, which I highly recommend reading. This season is based off Hidden Bodies by Caroline Kepnes, which I'll drop a link to in the comments for you to purchase. Moving into the grocery store area, I kind of had to get creative. While the game does have tomatoes and bell peppers and other fruits and veggies in the debug menu, it would have taken me hours to place them each individually. So instead of losing my sanity, I went for the grocery store aesthetic by placing various cornucopias, pumpkins, baskets, and the like along each of these tables. This harvest style design had a very fall vibe going to it, but I think it's a decent representation of the grocery store. And while the tables are being decorated, I did want to take a minute to say thank you to those who have been supporting my channel. My goal was to reach 100 subscribers by the end of 2019, and here we are on January 3rd with 157 subscribers. I'm beyond excited and so thankful for everyone who has supported me. If you're feeling particularly generous today, think about hitting the share button to share this video with your friends and family so we can continue to grow and improve this channel. While I was digging around in the debug menu, I found this super cool trellis being held up by these two trees. I felt like there wasn't enough hanging from the ceiling in the bookstore, so I placed it in there and I think it added an amazing bonus to the room. It looks so awesome in the final walkthrough, so make sure to keep watching until the end to get a really good look at it. Here, I placed the pieces for the cafe, like the espresso machine and the coffee bar. I decorated the back wall with the nectar bottles, and I think it added a really nice touch to this area. I also changed the flooring here, and it was the change this entire build needed. I think these ended up being the perfect floors that fit the mood of the show. Next, I go back to the counter in the grocery store and I placed a big chalkboard, then put some plants on the wall, along with a sink and some professional-looking documentation that a grocery store would most likely have. I don't know for certain where the bathrooms are located in the show, but I felt the back corner was a nice place to put them. I didn't really go into detail with them, so each bathroom has the basics of lighting, stalls, sinks, and a mirror. I did choose these items to kind of match the feel of Anavrin though. Hopping back over to the bookstore, I placed a few touch-ups like adding the little sitting area by the bookshelves, putting more furniture in the little quiet spot over here, and adding tons of fruit to this back counter. The back storage area isn't really anything too fancy. We get a short bit of it in the first episode when Joe is thinking about love. It's a bunch of crates, boxes, and really just the normal things you would expect to see in the back of the store like this. I placed some cracks on the walls just to give it a little more character. Since it's in Los Angeles, I'm sure this building has endured an earthquake or two, so I thought it would just be a little something to give the back room a little more oomph. Up next, we're moving to the storefront, which I think is so cool looking. Without all the extra additives of plants and their signage, this building would just look like a typical warehouse with nothing special about it. But there is so much greenery here. There's also a spot in the show where they park their bikes, so I wanted to make sure to add some of those to the front as well. I just had a lot of fun with this part. I love to place plants in my builds, so I kind of just went to town up here while still keeping it true to the show. I did add the wooden sign, which again we'll have to pretend it says Anavrin in Simlish. I mean, it just has a very welcoming and sul feel to it. I finished up the exterior by adding some natural foliage, and of course I had to add the palm trees because it's LA. I also forgot to mention earlier in the video that I built this on the empty lot in Del Sol Valley, which came with the Get Famous pack and is kind of like LA. I placed a ton of hanging plants, wall plants, plant displays, and other various plants in this little entrance area right before customers enter in through the grocery store. Then finally, last but most certainly not the least, the kitchen. I was most looking forward to building this room, so I needed to save the anticipation for the end. I love the feel of this room. It's very basic and industrial and romantic all in one. I feel like I could rebuild this kitchen in real life after a big shopping trip to IKEA. It was a lot of fun to put together, and it's one of the main rooms of the building in the show. I changed out the lights that I had originally placed, and I think the lighting, along with the floors that I used, really captures the same emotional feel of this room that I felt while watching this season of You. I mean, seriously, this show is so psychologically insane that it has you emotionally invested in murderers. I applaud Netflix and Caroline Kepnes for that. But anyway, we're coming up on the end of this speed build. I'd really appreciate anyone who gives my video a like and a share. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe, and I'll make sure to keep amazing content like this coming. I'll see you for another speed build next week. Bye!